Glad to know you're still with us right here on the morning edition on Real Broadcasting Network. Now, we'll turn attention to our first commentary. Yesterday officially marked, of 19th of August, officially marked the beginning of the 2027 Presidential and National Assembly campaign season. And this is where the conversation becomes a little more serious because for months now, we've been watching the political calculation, the defections, the alliances, the consultation, and all of the positioning. But now, technically, the campaign has begun officially. Let's hit the ground running with the campaigns. That's the language now from all political parties. The politicians can now come out and ask Nigerians directly for their vote. And that is an important distinction now because Nigerian politics has arguably been in campaign mode for quite some time now, even before now. So we have seen politicians traveling, holding meetings, making declarations, and building alliances long before 19th of August. But 19th of August officially when campaign started.
Well, that means we have roughly 5 months of intense political messaging ahead of us. It's going to run until the 15th of January. And I think the question Nigerians should be asking, we all should be asking, is what exactly are we going to be hearing for the next 5 months? Because if you listen to political conversations already, there's a lot of talk about who is going to defeat President Bola Tinubu, who is going to emerge as the strongest opposition candidate. Which party has the structure? Which politician has the wider following? But somewhere underneath all of that, there's supposed to be a conversation about the country. And if you're even going to throw into the mix a conversation around a possible alliance among the ranks of the opposition, you will not be far away from the truth. Now, elections should ultimately be a contest of ideas and records. And the starting point for the ruling APC is very clear. President Tinubu is seeking another term, and his campaign will have to defend the record of his administration since 2023. The government will point to its reforms, which they have already started to do, increased revenue, investment infrastructure, and what it describes as foundations that are being laid for a stronger economy. But what will the opposition be saying, Marian?
But the opposition will obviously tell Nigerians to look at the other side of that story because you cannot talk about the Tinubu administration without talking about the cost of the reforms, which this current administration have been hammering on. We know the cost is quite expensive and painful, but they are necessary, painstaking decision to make. The removal of the petrol and the subsidy, the changes to the foreign exchange system, inflation, the pressure on household income, food prices, transportation, the cost of living, these are not abstract economic indicators for Nigerians. These are things people are experiencing every single day of their lives.
And that is why I think the 2027 election is going to be very interesting because the government can say, look, we inherited structural problems and difficult reforms had to be made. The opposition can say, fine, but after 3 years, what has actually changed for the average Nigerian? And both arguments are going to be placed before the electorate. They may both be making a lot of sense with their arguments, but it's now left for the electorate themselves to make the decision.
And even the electorate itself has changed since 2023. People have lived through these reforms. They have seen the Naira move. They have seen petrol prices change. They have watched the cost of food rise. They have adjusted their businesses and households. So when politicians now come asking for another mandate, Nigerians are not hearing these policies for the first time. They are judging them based on experience, based on their record.
And in fact, that experience could become the biggest issue of this election because the administration's argument is essentially that some of the pain is part of a transition that the reforms are producing stronger government finances and greater investor confidence. But the voter does not necessarily measure an economy, the way an investor does. An investor may look at improved exchange liquidity or government revenue and say, yes, this is progress. But a Nigerian who goes to the market discovers for himself that the same amount of money now buys significantly less food. A young person looking for a job is not necessarily thinking about investor confidence. There's a family paying rent, school fees, all thinking about whether their income can survive another month.
And security will also be at the forefront alongside economy now, because regardless of what political party you support, insecurity remains one of the issues Nigerians are watching closely. people want to know whether they can travel safely. In the papers now, we've seen the UK say about 10 or 12 states have been said to not travel to. What is the reason for that conversation out there, or for that announcement or advisory out there? Because of insecurity. Can farmers return to their farms? Can businesses operate without fear? And can families now sleep without worrying about kidnapping or attacks? Can you hit the road any time of day without properly calculating how much you have in your account in case a ransom is called upon? So all of these issues are what Nigerians are looking forward in their individuals. So the APC, we have to campaign on its record. What have they done? What can you see that they have done? Not just saying what they've done, but what can you see that they have done? But then you have the opposition. That brings us to perhaps one of the biggest questions around 27. Can the opposition actually organize itself into a convincing alternative?
That is the billion naira question, Marion.
Right. If you look at the current administration, APC now, and what they said they have done, and what you can see that they have done, do you want to go by that? And then if you look at the opposition, what does the opposition have to offer you that is way better, not just good, not just better, but way better than what you currently have now? If the opposition come into power, can you go to the market and the cost of food is going to be reduced? Can you go to the petrol pump and you get fuel without queuing and the price of petrol will be reduced? So Nigerians are caught between the choices now.
Well, dissatisfaction with a government, it does not automatically produce a successful opposition. You need structure, you need organization. Some people might even go as far as saying you need alliances. You need the candidates that different groups are willing to support. And perhaps most importantly, you need people who are prepared to put their individual political ambitions aside for a broader objective. Let's put it into perspective. The opposition space is crowded. Atiku Abubakar now with the ADC, Peter Obi contesting under NDC. And there are other presidential candidates, Sandy Ono of the PDP, Donald Duke of the PRP, Gbenga Hashim, Adeola Adebayo, and of course, Shore, a whole lot of them. And there have been conversations about an alliance. But conversations about an alliance and actually building one are two different things.
Right. But because somebody has to step back.
Exactly. And that is perhaps where things even become complicated.
Very complicated, because it is very easy for politicians to agree that the country needs a different direction. It is much easier to say the words, but it's harder for them to agree on who should lead the direction. If you agree to say the country needs a new direction, then who should lead the direction? Is it you, or must it be you, or are you ready to support someone to lead that direction? Who becomes the presidential candidate? Who gets the vice presidential slots now?
Which party?
Which party provides the platform? How are the different political and political interests accommodated? And then you have supporters who have spent years building emotional and loyal support around some particular candidates now.
Well, 2023 already showed us what happens when major opposition forces remain divided. You had Bola Tinubu, Atiku, and Peter Obi pulling significant support from different parts of the electorate. The result was a highly competitive election in which the winning candidates did not receive anything close to a majority of the total votes cast. And that history is still relevant because the opposition understands that mathematics matters. You have millions of Nigerians who perhaps are unhappy with the government, but if the votes are divided among several candidates, the incumbent can still emerge victorious.
Really? But if you look at it from the incumbent to the opposition, which of the parties or candidates actually appeal to the ordinary Nigerian who will get to the polls to vote? Which means the opposition has two jobs. One is to convince Nigeria that the government has not done enough. The other is to convince those same Nigerians that it has a credible alternative. And which is the alternative now? Is it which of the party or which of the candidates are you going with now? Is Nigerian people going to vote for candidacy this time or for party this time? And that second part is also where I think the campaign, now becomes more interesting, because Nigerians deserve to hear more than Tinubu has failed, APC has failed, or Tinubu has succeeded, APC has succeeded. What is the alternative? If you're going to reverse a policy, how exactly are you going to do it? If you're promising a stronger Naira, how are you doing that? If you're promising cheaper food, where is the production coming from? How are you making sure that the food is cheaper? And if you're promising jobs, what sector are you building those jobs around? Nigerians have gone beyond hearsay. They want practical solution. Let's be practical this time. We've gone from the whole rather. Let's come to the table and say what the main thing is.
Exactly. For all the things that you intend to achieve, what is the strategy? Campaign rally can give you excitement for 2 hours. Governance gives you consequences for 4 years, right? And that is why the timing of the campaign is significant. We have 5 months in which politicians will have enormous access to Nigerians. They will be on television, they will be on radio, you see them on social media, you see them in markets and in communities, at rallies. They will tell us why they deserve our votes. But Nigerians also have an opportunity to reverse that relationship. Instead of simply listening to politicians, voters can interrogate them. What exactly did you do when you were in office? What did your party do? What are you promising now? How much will it cost? Where will the money come from? And perhaps the most important question, why should Nigerians believe you this time? Trust is going to be a major issue. Nigerians have heard promises before. Every election cycle comes with a new vocabulary: renewal, rescue, transformation, prosperity, change, hope. But eventually, these words have to mean something in people's lives. And I think that is why the economic conversation is going to be important. We cannot have a 2027 campaign where politicians spend months talking about personalities while avoiding the economic reality facing the country. And in fact, Marian, this is an important part of the conversation. While the campaigns are going to start, we want to see less of personal attacks or hate speeches or calling out people and saying, your father did this, your mother did this, that's not the kind of...
to dig out the time they were born and the time they were not born.
We're not really interested in all of that.
We've gone past that.
The issues that the country is dealing with, what are your plans to deal with them? What are your plans to address those concerns on security, on the economy, on several sectors of the nation? What is your plan? What are you planning to do differently?
Because when you look at it, the slogans don't provide anything like job. The rallies and the enormous crowd that will come chanting and singing do not provide the cheaper food that you can buy in the markets. I mean, you got to demand the manifesto. Even the just talks of the manifesto doesn't even do the job. You need to ask the questions. How? If you say you're going to make petrol cheaper, how are you going to do that? We need to know. You need to demand the plan. You need to ask what we actually change and how it will be achieved. If you say we're going to produce more, how are we going to produce more? Where is the production going to come from? Where is the production hub going to be? We need to understand. And, political alliances on their own don't fix the security. Whether you join forces with your counterpart or whatever, it doesn't fix the problem. How are you going to fix the problem? So as the 2027 campaign officially gets on the way, perhaps the most important thing Nigerians can do is listen. Not just listening to them singing and chanting and playing the drums and bringing the DJ for you to dance and give you bread and rice and they go home. No. You need to listen carefully to what they say. Listen beyond the applause, beyond the slogans, beyond the political drama. Look at the record, the ideas, the plans, the body language. One thing is to say one thing. Do the person, do the candidate, does the party mean what they say? Because by January, Nigerians will not just be choosing who they like. They'll be choosing who they can trust with the next 4 years of their lives. And that is a decision that deserves more than a campaign slogan. That's where you come in right now on the program.
Well, you have your job cut out for you as the electorate while you criticize and engage with these candidates.
Right.
Now you know what you're supposed to do as the electorate. 5 months, it has to be 5 months where we're having intense and robust conversations on the direction the country will be going right after January 2027.
Right.
Well, that's where we give it a rest on the issue of the campaign starting and switch gears now